I think we've covered the entrepreneur vector enough. Let's talk a little bit about the blue jeans and blockchain area. So many of you know we started the firm with an investment thesis we simply called Cloud Intelligence. We have many of our investors here. And honestly, the thinking here was pretty simple. Those of you know I wrote a thesis back in early 2000s called Everything as a Service. And it conceived of the idea that everything would be connected to the cloud. And of course, we now know that's happened. You know, it doesn't matter whether it's your Apple Watch or a thermostat at home or whether it's a digital factory sensor. It is all streaming an enormous amount of data into the cloud, and that data is overwhelming unless there's some intelligence behind that to actually drive the next generation of applications on new kinds of devices to improve business or our lives. So that's the cloud intelligence thesis, and it's been responsible for basically helping us find the best entrepreneurs to address the issues that are arising here. And one of those problems has become very poignant, which is trust. It turns out that the more we use the cloud, the more we become reliant on it. And the more we become reliant on it, the more, obviously, we depend on it for many things day to day. If that heart monitor that's looking after a patient goes down and it isn't streaming the right data, that could be critical. And there have been real examples of this. So one of the reasons we're excited to find CloudZero, and I didn't even tell you what they did, is that they are the first company to actually manage what they call the chaos in the cloud and to predict where the next failure will be. Now, we hear the public examples of that, and they're big. People hear of Amazon going down, which, as a sponsor, they'll be the first to tell you they're way ahead of other people from. But the point is, it's real that, of course, there's going to be turbulence in the cloud. You can't avoid it. So CloudZero is addressing that on the reliability side, and we're very proud to be investing on them. But trust goes a lot further than that, because today is a lot more than just transactions. And so I want to bring this to life, because you can't open the paper these days without being exposed to the challenges of this. And I'm not just talking about Equifax, which exposed nearly half of the US population's personal information. I'm talking about the problems that exist in companies that don't even know about them. So it took years, for example, for the FDIC to admit this, but they just finally exposed. They've had 50 breaches in the last 2 years. Yahoo, we all heard that they had 1 billion accounts exposed. Not true. It's actually 3 billion, but worse still, it took them 3 years to figure that out. They only just exposed that last year. This is a pandemic. And what really scares me is people like the FDIC don't even bother informing us for 9 months. This has got to change. We concluded there really are only a couple of types of company now. Frankly, those that have been hacked and those that know they've been hacked. And those that know that they've been hacked don't even know how badly it is. It's pretty sad. But this isn't a problem that, by the way, is just forced on us, so it's just left to us. It's forced on us. And I need to explain this to you because I'm constantly asked by many people, so even in my own family, you know, why is this a problem? Why can't we do something about it? Well, we're at the root of it. Because every time we log in, even to Facebook, we're giving up our credentials. We're giving it up knowingly. And then Facebook, of course, aggregates all those credentials, and guess what they do? They sell it back to us as advertising. So we're encouraging that. No problem, we're all getting value out of it, it works great. The problem is that you may not realize this, but on average, we're opening about 9 apps a day in America today and sharing this information willingly. And that, of course, gets aggregated, but what you might not be aware of, because we don't see this, is that in the background, there are thousands of companies like Equifax who are actually using that information and selling it to people that we don't even know, we don't even have relationships with, as brokers of that data. And of course, all of this is exposing our footprint wider and wider to the potential to be breached and for that trust to be broken. Not a great situation, unless you're a vendor. So a funny story here. Some of you may know this, but apparently a few of you don't know me this long. Literally 3 decades ago, I was lucky enough to be involved in Symantec when it was a sub-$20 million company and set it up in Europe. Great fun. That's the image of me. It's actually Dustin Hoffman, but I felt I'd like to look like him. Chilling out as we launched what was the first antivirus software and backup software and everything else. It was an amazing business. It was fun to watch it go through being public, becoming a billion-dollar business. Many of you in the room are actually my colleagues, people like John Bruce, who helped me build that business. Fantastic experience. But if I look at it from the customer standpoint, what we've done is create an industry over the last 25 years that is just littered with more and more and more layers of the same thing. We protect as much as we can. We add more layers to that. If that doesn't work, then obviously we try to cure or respond to the problems as best we can. It's great. There's no reason why, of course, this will stop, because you can't solve all problems at once. But it's not really serving us as the ultimate purpose of what we get up to do in the morning. Because I don't know anybody, raise your hand if you do, that gets up to do security. We get up to do stuff. We get up to transact, to engage, to make things happen. Security is a necessary evil. And it's a part of our lives that can change. But I also want to make sure you understand, this is not just about data security. This is not just about your own personal information. This is about the transactions we do every day. How many of you own a house? Own a house? Okay, good number of you. Bad news for you. About a third of you are wrong. It's actually really scary to hear this, but the house titles that you think you own are on average contested 1 in 3 times. When you come to sell your house, if you're lucky to get through this maze, which by the way on average is taking about 12 to 13 weeks when they're contested, then you will be able to sell your house, the house you in theory own. And the reason is simple, because we're allowing centralized third parties to aggregate and own our data for us. And until we change that behavior, nothing's going to change. And these people have cruddy record keeping. For those of you who are technical in the audience, CRUD is a technical term for creating, reading, updating, and deleting information. And it's cruddy because guess what? It's really easily tampered with. And so we're allowing people to do this, and when we get the problems we have, what do? We say, oh, let's pay some more money. Let's get title insurance. Why not? We're just gluttons for punishment. And that doesn't even work, because guess what? There's fraud going on in that industry. The Chicago Title Insurance Company was recently responsible for $30 million worth of this fraud, holding up purchases for years in some cases for clients. This is crazy. This is so fundamentally flawed. And we're supposed to be a technologically advanced society. This cannot go on. And there is a better way, of course. The obvious thing we should do is take control of our own data. And owning it in a distributed way is the beginning of this. We should also have at our disposal the ability to control that and to ensure that wherever it goes, we can track it. It's not complicated. And what's exciting about this is that there is a technology called blockchain that enables us to do all of that, which, by the way, the more people who have that data, when they're chained together, hence the name blockchain, make it more secure. In a simple analogy, imagine it's like a neighborhood watch. The more people in your neighborhood watch, the more secure your house is going to be. I just explained blockchain to you without you knowing it in about 5 minutes. And the potential for blockchain is unbelievably alluring. It's why we're spending so much time on it, even though it's just one of the investment areas in trusted cloud intelligence. The potential is such that I predict in the future you will see every single application you're used to using today, whether it's Spotify or Uber or eBay, reinvented as a trusted version of itself. What does that mean? Well, you don't need middlemen in the future. Why do we have to pay Uber to catch a ride from a taxi driver who's providing the service? Why not just pay them directly? You can loan them your credentials for the time in a secure way that it needs for them to authenticate you, pick you up, take you to your destination. You pay them directly on the blockchain in a cryptocurrency of your choice. And guess what? You get dropped off. The value is delivered where it should be. Nobody owns your credentials except you. That's the future we're going to have. And like all things, the challenge is predicting it. When will it happen? I just mentioned to you that when I first predicted everything as a service, that was the early 2000s. It took about 15 years for me to be standing on this stage talking about that as things like trusted cloud intelligence. These things take time, and the best way to understand that is to look back at where the internet was in the mid-90s. This, believe it or not, is what you would have found if you went to apple.com in the mid-90s. Pretty amazing. You couldn't buy anything there, by the way. It was basically brochureware. Yet today, we've just invested in a company called Molten that enables e-commerce to be completely seamlessly embedded into any digital experience. This is an example of a site that you don't even know you're buying anything. You just explore around, learn all about a product, and you buy it. And they've already had thousands and thousands of orders go through this in the first few months. Congratulations to those entrepreneurs who've enabled that. But that didn't happen overnight. As I said, in that case, it's 20 years later that we're talking about this. So you can see that these transitions take time, and our job is to figure out how do we help you navigate that. Back to the blue jeans. Most entrepreneurs love to think about everything as up and to the right. But in reality, it never happens that way. We all know who've been through it. There are lots of twists and turns along the way. And the story I'd like to share with you is of two entrepreneurs, or two people who you could look at this through. One is John Sutter, and the other is Levi Strauss. You probably know Levi Strauss. My guess is you don't know John Sutter. John Sutter was the guy who first discovered gold in California on his land. How many people think he's a billionaire? Sadly, he made nothing. I'd much rather you turned out to be Levi Strauss. Because in the gold rush, it wasn't the gold that made the money to start off with. Most people walked away panning with nothing. But the people who are selling the pickaxes and the shovels, and most of all, the blue jeans, the denim, that was actually the workers' clothing, not only made a fortune, but it endures that all of you were wearing it and all of you own a pair today. It's a $4.6 billion revenue company, just Levi's alone today. And so this is what we're going to try to do, is to think about how can you time this. And Carlota Perez is a much smarter woman than I am, would say, the challenge is to predict what goes on in these cycles, which are almost invariably a boom, bust, and then a build-out cycle, just like it did on the internet, the 2000 bust. And the build-out, by the way, is often an order of magnitude bigger than anybody thinks it will be. It just takes longer. So I remember a time when people were telling me that it was crazy. I'd talked through an experience of internet advertising and how it could be a multi-tens of billions of dollar industry. They thought that was insane back in the late 90s. It was, except it's now wrong by an order of magnitude. Minor detail. It just takes time. The joy of this is that if you look at this, there's tremendous opportunity for entrepreneurs if they write it correctly. First, inevitably comes the disruption of something brand new in the technology. In the case of blockchain, it's going to be so disrupting that the next phase it will disintermediate everybody who has a middleman role. So think of those people that I was saying that owning the trust documents, the deed titles for your house. Those are not going to exist in the future. They'll get reinvented in different ways as we can figure out how to redevelop applications that genuinely deliver value as opposed to taking a slice of it for being in the middle, which just doesn't make sense, especially as it exposes us to all the risks I just described. And in the end, what we learn from this is that every time, if I look back over the last 30 years of being an entrepreneur and then becoming an investor, this happens, it plays out in three waves. You first have to have the infrastructure, the foundations, if you will, before you build the house. And only then can you build the applications and then ultimately the services. And we are so early that we are not going to try to predict this for you. In fact, we've learned never to predict anything, but instead to go and listen. So I'm happy to announce today that we are going to do the third in a series of survey and research and thought leadership programs engaging the real potential customers of this. And we'll be doing something called the future of blockchain. We've got many people here. I just saw Kim Polizzi, for example, who've participated in one of these we did called the Future of Open Source that we started about 10, well actually more like 15 years ago. Then we did the Future of Cloud. These were the thought leadership programs that helped bring leaders like Jim Whitehurst, who runs Red Hat, or Andy Jassy, who runs Amazon, to work with us to help our entrepreneurs understand what's really happening, but more importantly, to engage the potential customers, the partners, the real users of this. But I want to announce something very special today, because in the old days, I didn't run the firm that I worked at that did that. But good news, I have a little bit of say around here. So all of you are going to get to participate free in the future of blockchain. All you have to do is send a link, and you will go send a link by going to the Future of Blockchain survey session, which is coming up, I think, in about an hour's time, to Brian at _.vc. So Brian at _.vc, or go to that session and he'll give you the link. You all can participate. You can shape the surveys, you can come to the dinners, you can engage the customers, you can help us define the programs you want, and we will together navigate this timing. And obviously, like everything, we believe in doing it in an open source way, so the results and everything will be yours to share and use as you see fit. So I think I've talked enough, and I'll bring it to a conclusion here by just sharing with you that for us, this is really all about putting our money where our mouth is. And so while I've talked about what we're doing, investing is what we're really about. So I'm happy to announce our first blockchain investment. It is in infrastructure, and just to give you a sense of what it means to be investing in infrastructure, amazingly today, as an example of how immature the blockchain is, you cannot get data from off the blockchain onto the blockchain. You might think, why is that a big deal? Well, any transaction today probably involves data somewhere. So for example, if you want to make a payment, you have to be able to access your bank or your retail payment provider. If you need the interest rate for that payment, if it's a payment on a loan for your house mortgage, for example, you need that. So it's pretty fundamental if you can't get that data on the blockchain. So a smart contract actually makes it possible to get access to data off the blockchain in real time and link it straight onto the blockchain so you can do transactions in any way that makes sense. Congratulations to Sergey and the team that have been building this. We were lucky enough to seed them, and they just completed a $32 million ICO as part of that for the Chainlink product. And thanks to my team for making that happen. So I'll summarize by saying, Blue Jeans, blockchain, and entrepreneurs, we love you all. This is a great time to be in our business. We love backing founders at the earliest stages. We're delighted to introduce the You First program. Thank you to all the students that have contributed it, to Abby for leading it. We love investing in areas that are disruptive, like the overall trusted cloud intelligence thesis. And of course, we're very Boston biased, but we look forward to seeing you wherever you may come from. Thanks.